All right, today we are going to be jumping back into the Bitcoin price action, covering this massive dump we had on price. We lost support. This is why I've been saying that 64,500 level needed to hold, and if it did not hold and we did backtest it as resistance as we did, it would not look good. But I don't want to sound like I predicted this at all, as I had been continually saying I thought the low was in. It was hopium from me because I knew that was our last line of support. And when we lost it, I didn't really want to, flip completely bearish. I didn't want to tell people to bottom sell because I knew that the altcoin market has started to outperform. And we'll make sure to cover that as well because my case of an altcoin season is still certainly very valid right now. And I do think the altcoin season is going to happen soon. But yeah, losing this level down here, the last line of support, as I had talked about, was a sign of weakness. We should have known this was coming. We could not accept back above. We should have all seen this coming, and I am sorry if you got hopium from my videos because I was having a bullish bias continually. And we just got to remember it's all probabilities at the end of the day, and because of that I will try to stay more non-biased going forward, giving you guys the bear and bull case simultaneously to stay objective when it comes to the market. But let's go ahead, let's cover the good, bad, and ugly when it does come to price action today and talk about what we're seeing on the charts. And before we do get into the TA, I have to mention I had a live stream earlier today where I do cover all of this stuff and more, very in-depth look at the markets, focused on Bitcoin specifically in that live stream, so it wasn't congested with a bunch of altcoin suggestions and all of that sort of stuff. So it is a very good watch, only about an hour and a half compared to my longer live streams. So if you want more information on everything I'm going to talk about, my outlook on the market, all of that good stuff, definitely do recommend go watch that live stream that I did have. You can find it in the live section of this channel. So clearly we broke to the downside of this channel and backtested it as resistance. And this channel was respected very well. I'll give it that. If you were trading this as a retail trader, you're looking at retail patterns, you're thinking, oh, it's a break of a pattern. Let me sell the backtest. Well, I mean, we got that clearly here. I'm sure a lot of traders got away with getting this nice short entry. I'm sure a lot of longers got trapped trying to long here and then it flipped on them and they didn't have a tight stop. That's why you always got to trade with a tight stop and know what you're doing. But yeah, you can see, I mean, this was respected very well. Rejection off this middle trend and then breaking that. I'm going to go ahead and remove this middle one for now, but I will go ahead and actually extend this out because clearly these lines have been being respected. So this could be a potential area of resistance, but because it's not at a resistance point, I just think it'll be an area to watch that we get flipped into support. And then, I think we'll flip the stuff into support and then this could be the trap. So we'll be watching something like that to play out here. Deviation to the downside, deviation to the upside, and then we fall over. And let's get into these potential scenarios that I do think are going to play out and why I have in fact flipped more or less bearish when it does come to Bitcoin. That is not to say I have flipped completely bearish and just sold all of my bags. No, it is not the time to sell, and in fact it is a great buying opportunity in my opinion for the altcoin market. We had a perfect swing failure of this 58.8 level that I had identified on our live stream, and not only do we have a structural low that looks pretty good. If we go out to our daily time frame, you can see a daily bullish divergence coming in here as well. So this is a very good thing to see here on the chart, right? Lower lows on RSI, higher lows on price. But like I said, I don't want to be calling lows here. Well, I do think, yeah, the low's probably in. Anything can happen, and I'm actually not too bullish now on the long term anymore. While I do think a local low is very likely, we're going to squeeze shorts, right? The shorts aren't just going to get away with, bottom shorting all of this. The falling knife, there was a lot of shorts being opened, and we did go ahead and squeeze out all of the long positions, sweeping liquidity from all the way back here. There's not too much reason to go down anymore on a liquidity basis, that sort of thing. I know I've been saying that, but really at this point, at least a shorter term time frame reversal is extremely likely, especially just looking on an order flow basis of how this low formed. Firstly, it was an extremely fast wick to the downside. I was watching it. It was a liquidity sweep for sure that did in fact form a nice sweep structure, swing failure pattern of the 58.8 level we talked about, with a whole bunch of imbalances to the bottom, creating a massive failed auction here into a big buy wall with continuous buyers stepping in on the move up. But like I said, I don't want to be calling lows, and assuming we do get the reversal here, we need to be watching out for where is that reversal going to top out, and why have I flipped more bearish on my outlook for the markets. So we got a lot of reasons to be at least bullish here on the very short-term time frames. I don't think it's time to panic sell. I think, we're going to see a retracement here, and especially for the altcoin market, which we'll talk about later on, the Bitcoin dominance is a fine knife right now, which is really good for those risk on assets. But because of this dump, unfortunately, we have broken market structure, and this is why I didn't want to lose that 64,500 level. And at this point, I do think it is kind of over for Bitcoin. Am I saying it's not possible to make an all-time high again? No, absolutely not. I still think it's probable that we do go squeeze up to 75K, grab that liquidity. I just think the $100,000 plus is kind of off the table at this point. It's kind of hopium. While anything is possible when it comes to price action and that sort of thing, you can't predict the future. It all depends on what the S&P does. But as I've covered in previous videos, I think people are going to get wrong-footed thinking a bull market will last into 2025. I think there's a great recession or even depression 2.0 that will take place later on, within the next couple of years. And I think, with what price action is doing now, it's showing signs of weakness. And this is certainly a secondary sign of weakness in Wyckoff distribution, signaling that the top is already in, or that we will make an upthrust after distribution in one of these two scenarios. So we identified a couple levels on stream to be watching out for. Mainly is going to be this big imbalance zone up at around $64,000. There's volume confluences there. If I were to turn on my volume levels here, see right up here, there's the value area low of a previous month, which is going to act as big resistance, as well as there's a lot of inefficiencies there. If you do look at my level identifier chart, you can see these inefficiencies represented by the fair value gaps on a daily time frame, as well as specifically on an hourly time frame. We have a lot of volume levels, volume confluences in this area. This is also where we found the previous resistance, and it is a sweep level at this point. So right there's a sweep level, as well as we do have liquidity above here where there's that other fair value gap. So I think, anywhere in this block right here is what we want to get through. There's just so much resistance now, up from 64K to 66K, that this is a big, level to be watching for. Because if we can't get through it, that is a potential place you could roll over for Bitcoin on a macro basis. And so we definitely need to be staying vigilant right now and watching out for that to kind of play out. But I know that levels indicator is very complicated, so I want to simplify it for you guys with just some simple rectangles going from those levels I was talking about. So you have these two sweep levels in here with a bunch of volume confluences. So I would go ahead and draw a box around this, where those inefficiencies are in the chart, where we could possibly top out. And this is kind of your first big level to watch. Can we go ahead and get through this and flip it as support? In which, if we can do this, I think all-time highs are almost guaranteed at that point. And this is what I really want to see, and I think is a big possibility. I still have my bullish bias and want this to happen, but we're going to be objective here because this could also flip as resistance and we could come crashing down. But what we're seeing on Bitcoin dominance tells us during this move up right here, even if it is just a retracement, we should see altcoins outperforming Bitcoin, especially since we are going into a big catalyst for altcoins, specifically Ethereum coins, as that Ethereum ETF is scheduled to be going live to launch probably later on this summer, as early as July 2nd is what a lot of people are predicting. So yeah, I think at a minimum, we're going to get up here. Where would this be in the cycle? Well, it would be similar to right here in the cycle. So we have one more retrace up before rolling over and properly entering the bear market. And if you study 2021, go ahead and look at what went crazy during this time frame here, and you will see there was a ton of money to still be made in the markets even during this retrace. Look at your meme coins like Shiba and some other alts. A lot of stuff actually did continue to go parabolic during this high here, and you actually made a higher high on total 3 while Bitcoin made a lower high. And I think we could see a similar thing play out here as well. I think we could make a higher high on total 3 if Bitcoin is just going to go into a retracement here. And while that would signal the top for sure, it would also leave you plenty of room to make money if you are buying or just holding from right now. And is why it's not a time to panic sell, in my opinion. So that's kind of worst case scenario. That's the ugly. That's what we don't really want to see play out. But even if it were to play out, certainly not the end of the world, as long as you understand what's going on with the markets and are able to time your exits and get out when you see the euphoria return on that Ethereum ETF launch, and you do see that this is probably where Bitcoin's going to top. You don't get euphoric, you don't have hopium, and you go ahead and sell where you should be actually doing pretty good, and you will be a lot better off than the majority of the crowd. And I think a euphoric rally into a retrace is still something to look forward to. But like I said, I'm a little bit more bullish. I still know there's a lot of liquidity up at 75K. I want to see this scenario happen, where we actually flip it into support. And while this is a real possibility because of the dump we had right now, this is our sign of weakness, and I would not get euphoric on the break of all-time highs, even if we do, flip this into support and get up there. I would be very cautious when we do get up into this area here, and I would go ahead and start looking to get out of your positions for a potential Wyckoff after distribution playing out here at this level. And I think you're going to have a lot of people wrong-footed, because I know a lot of YouTubers, even the bearish ones, are still calling for $80,000 plus. Targets that people want just aren't hit at all. And I think even people calling for just $80,000 are going to be wrong-footed, because we will probably top out around $76,000 to $79,000. It's going to front run everyone waiting for that magical $80,000 plus price. It would front run everybody waiting for $100,000 plus. And I think you're going to see a lot of euphoria return. If we were to get those all-time highs, you're going to see a lot of price targets for 100K plus on that break of all-time highs. You're going to see euphoria return. And in this move up, you would see a massive altcoin season, and you could see an entire wave 2 of the altcoin season, which we had covered previously. And this is what I'm really hoping for, and I still think it's a very big possibility, if not probability, as long as the dollar does not rip to the upside, as long as the S&P does not dump from here. Those are going to be the assets we need to be watching for. I think as long as the S&P continues to go into price discovery, this is probably what's going to happen for Bitcoin. But because the S&P did go ahead and make a good high, it did pull back here. We had talked about how when these parabolas start turning red, it is time to be cautious. We want to make sure they're not rolling over. And unfortunately, it has started to roll over. But we do have a clear level of support within here on the S&P, and we are still above that support. We have some sweep levels that need to get grabbed. So coming down here and deviating this is not the end of the world. We just want to see this level get reclaimed. We want to see the range get reclaimed, and we do want to start marching up to all-time highs, and at a minimum potentially just trade sideways within here and have a longer distribution, giving us room for Bitcoin to run during that time. If the S&P dumps, we can't really do anything about it, and Bitcoin will go ahead and follow. So we need to be watching this carefully, right? Make sure we're not just illusion structure here on the S&P, but so far not bad. These lows need to get taken out, and we're still holding support here. So I don't really mind that. When it comes to the dollar, it does look a little bit bullish right here, right? We're kind of making a double bottom, so really don't want to see this thing just continue ripping to the upside. But if it did, we do have that macro trend of lower highs on the daily time frame. So, just want to find resistance in this area here and head on down. I do think that's very likely. Now the question is, do we find support here? Maybe swing fail these lows within here as well before heading on up. I think that's also very likely. So we'll be watching out for that. If Bitcoin were to do a Wyckoff upthrust after distribution or just a retracement, this could be a catalyst for it. Just a short dump here on the dollar before that final high. But we got to watch this closely, make sure this isn't flipping into support. And there's also another scenario that the dollar actually gives us room for 6 figures on Bitcoin. If this were to flip into resistance and we hunt down to these lower levels, yeah, I mean, that's the catalyst for mass euphoria in the markets, for the S&P to continue onto a massive parabola. And we will be wanting to watch the dollar here, because these levels will kind of tell us which direction the market's going to go. But as of now, I think it's most probable we do come down here, but it's not going to flip into resistance anymore. I think the strength of the dollar is probably going to hold, and we probably are just going to see a Wyckoff upthrust after distribution. I had talked about all of the possible places Bitcoin could have topped out. I had talked about how the top could have already been in, and I talked about how we could have this Wyckoff upthrust after distribution. So nothing is really surprising me too much. We had planned for all of this. It's just unfortunate that we are showing those major signs of weakness, and that it is more probable we are in the distribution already. And the hopium of holding the 64.5 and possibly going to $100,000 with a massive altcoin season is kind of out of the window at this point. But I got to end the video off on a good note, and that is that Bitcoin dominance is a complete falling knife right now. The altcoin season is about to ramp up, and I do think even in a retracement scenario and a Wyckoff upthrust after distribution scenario, we had looked at this previously, your wave 2 of the altcoin season can happen while Bitcoin is pretty much flat, and it looks like we are seeing money flow into those risk-on assets, and there are going to be a ton of gains to be made within the next coming weeks or even months to come. Just be cautious for whenever that ETF does launch. It could be used as exit liquidity, and we want to be cautious about that. But who knows? Maybe we come down here, ETH ETF launches, we have a small sell in the news event, but then this breaks back under, and we do have a proper altcoin season later on that lasts out into election season. Like I said, the markets are impossible to predict. We just got to take things day by day. But so far, so good for the altcoin season. This is actually playing out exactly how I wanted it to. Breaking that daily EMA does confirm it is time for risk on. It's time to have this last wave of euphoria. Just be cautious, because a lot of people are going to be calling for targets that just won't get hit when we do start getting these retracements. So make sure to be watching out for these two scenarios in here, because we will have a lot of people calling for price targets that just won't get hit, especially if we do break all-time highs. No one is going to be saying that we are only going to $75,000, $76,000. They're all going to be calling for 80K plus, and that is where a lot of retail is going to get trapped. So if we see these altcoins start firing off, if we see meme coins skyrocketing to multiple billions, we see a lot of hype around the Ethereum ETF, a lot of news headlines bringing that euphoria back into the markets, I would say at this point we are looking to get out when we do see euphoria return, just like we had back up at these highs here. But this is just a quick video to update you guys on the dump, why it's not time to worry, and what assets I do expect to kind of rally here in the near term future, and why you definitely need to stay vigilant in the markets. But make sure to go ahead and check out the live stream if you want my full take on everything. I cover a lot more during that stream that is valuable information. So make sure to go check that out if you're at all interested, as well as if you have any questions about what I talked about in this video. Make sure to go join my Discord down below. And with that being said, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.